Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Samuel J., and I'm a professor of communication studies here at MSU Denver. I'm here to talk to you today about effective public speaking. We're going to touch upon some of the key points that hopefully will add some strength to your next presentation and allow you to be an effective speaker. So let's begin with how do you prepare? The first point that you should really hit upon is what is your central topic? It's very, very important that you figure out exactly what it is that you want to talk about. So in the realm of your class, it might be something like a research project that you need to summarize. Maybe you have to give a persuasive speech in something like a communication studies class, or you have to highlight a persuasive article that maybe you wrote in a journalism class. The point of that is you have to figure out exactly what your topic is and what you need to talk about. Once you have that figured out, what is the purpose of your presentation? So you've got your topic. Let's say it's global warming. And you know the purpose of your presentation is to inform. Well, if your purpose is to inform, then you want to provide as much information about that topic, global warming, as possible. If your purpose is to persuade, if it is to get people to recycle more, then your purpose is to persuade. It is that, and therefore, how you present that information is going to be persuasive. You want to present one particular argument about global warming, and you want to convince your audience about that argument. If you are perhaps giving something like a speech at a wedding, and it's more of a celebratory speech, then maybe your purpose is to entertain your audience, or your purpose is to make the bride or the groom feel good about that day. That is the purpose of that speech. So, what is your topic? Narrow that down, and then what is the purpose of you presenting on that topic? Is it to inform? Is it to persuade? Is it to entertain? Figure that out, and once you have those 2 points figured out, figure out what it is that you need to say, what needs to be said. What needs to be said is kind of a tough question sometimes because we want to often cover as much ground as possible when we give a speech. And so let's say you wrote a 10-page research project, research proposal on something regarding psychological behavior. And there's a lot of information in that 10 pages, and you need to narrow that down to 5 to 6 minutes, which is all the time that you have allowed to speak in your class. If that's the case, everything that's in that 10 pages can't be presented. So what you have to ask yourself is what needs to be said? What do I need to say in that 5 to 6 minutes, or that 7 to 8 minutes, or maybe it's 10 to 14 minutes that gets the audience where I need them to go? If the purpose is to persuade my audience, how do I get as much information and present it in a strong and an understandable way that gets my audience to that end goal of what needs to be said, or of what I want them to do. Obviously, you can't cram everything in there. You've got to be selective. You got to be thoughtful. And so figure out, if I need to get them from A to B to C, how do I do that? What information do I provide about that topic that I have been asked to talk about? It is very important to not provide too much information. It can be overwhelming to your audience. And oftentimes, the goal of something like a research presentation is to actually touch upon the key points in order to try to get your audience interested in that topic and get them to maybe want to read that research proposal or to dive deeper into that research project. So, again, what needs to be said? What are the key things that have to be said? And if I didn't say them, they would actually make my speech lack something. So what needs to be said? Time to outline. All right, so once you've figured out your topic and how you want to present it, how you want to frame it, and what needs to be said, it's time to outline things. So the first step in an outline, and the first step in a presentation or a speech, is to really grab your audience's attention. Do I perhaps open up my presentation with a question, right? What would we do if we no longer had snow in Colorado, right? People would have to think, well, you have my attention now because I'm thinking about it. Or maybe it's a statistic. Did you know that over the last 150 years, the average temperature in Denver has increased by 7 degrees in December? Right, that's a pretty wide margin. That's pretty significant. All right, so now you kind of have thrown out this fact, and people are really interested in it. So you want to grab their attention. Once you have that, you want to kind of summarize your key points. You want to let your audience know, where are you going to go with this? In a speech presentation, I really suggest that in that introduction, right, so you have your attention getter, now you want to summarize it. You summarize those points. You lay out a map for your audience. I'm going to talk about A, B, and C. And then in the body of your speech, you actually say A, B, and C. Here are these three things that I've talked about. And then in the conclusion, right, so that's number 4 there, remind them of what you want them to remember. You touch upon those things again. I just told you about A, B, and C. So because this is a speech, because they're not, probably, maybe they are, but assume that not everybody's taking down really, really extensive notes. You just want to hit upon these key points multiple times so that way they remember it. And then as you're doing that, hit upon your transitions, right? So let's say I've given my introduction. Did you know X, Y, and Z? Today I'm going to talk about A, B, and C. Now let me begin, right? So that now let me begin, that is your transition. And then within the body of that speech, within the body of that presentation, you might say something like, now that I've talked about A, let me talk about B. Now that I've finished up talking about B, let's transition to C. Those phrases, right? Those phrases, those transitions, those signposts are extremely important because they allow your audience to really understand and to be aware of when you're moving from point A to point B to point C to point D, however many points those are. So use those transitions and use them well. And then 4 there, again, remind them of what you want them to remember in that conclusion as you wrap things up. I just told you about A, I just told you about B, and I just told you about C. Remember to drive those things home. It helps them remember. Now, all right, you've got your outline. You've got these transitions and the key points you want to touch upon. It's really important to get your notes in order. So what do you need in front of you that will allow you to present most effectively? This is a really, really important question to ask yourself. I tell people, presenting from notes on your cell phone is a really terrible idea because it's very, very hard to kind of read and to scan and to scroll as you follow through a speech. So personally, I like an outline that maybe just has key words as points. So point 1 is just one word, introduction. Point 2 is weather stats, and 3 is impact on living, these kinds of things. I don't flesh everything out word for word because for me, if I do that, I just end up reading from a piece of paper, and that's not good for me. And so for you, maybe it is these keywords, maybe it's a phrase, maybe it's a sentence, maybe it's note cards, right, that allow you to kind of flip through things because that helps you kind of flow through the speech. No matter what that is, really, really work to figure out what are the notes that I need to give the best possible presentation that allow me to act and to present naturally. And that takes a little practice, quite honestly. It does take practice in speaking to kind of figure out what that is. Now, let's say you have to use a slide deck, a PowerPoint, a Prezi, a Keynote, if you will, in Apple. It's important to get these slides ready in a way that's going to let your audience have some value and add some value and have a better experience because of these slides. So that's why I write, your slides are for your audience and not for you. These are not notes that you can follow along and remember where you're supposed to go. It's kind of inevitable that you're probably going to do that, but just remember that those slides are for your audience. So you want to keep them simple. You want those slides to add to what you're saying and not take away. So what I mean by that is if you're just going to say and read the same thing that's on a slide, your audience is not getting anything from that because you're just regurgitating what's already up there. So instead, what I suggest is, let's say you have a really important statistic about, again, global warming or climate change, excuse me. And we want to call upon that temperature increase in the city of Denver in December. I wouldn't write out, the temperature in the city of Denver, average temperature in the city of Denver has increased 7% over the last 150 years in December. I wouldn't write word for word, but maybe I just put up 7 degrees. And that 7 degrees, right, that important number that I really want to drive home, my audience remembers. It supplements what's coming out of my mouth. It's very simple, but they know that looks important, and I should remember that. And then visualize where you are able. So charts, graphs, photographs, these things really, really help your audience. And those learners who maybe not, who maybe need that kind of additional reminder of the importance and the significance of whatever you're talking about. Put up a slide with a chart, with a graph. Show things that really drive things home. And then how to nail your delivery. Okay, so good eye contact. You want to make sure that you've practiced enough, that's the next slide, that you can maintain eye contact across your audience. It's important to kind of move back and forth. If you're nervous about that, there's some tricks. You can stare at somebody's forehead. You can actually look at objects at the back of the room instead of your audience, because nobody knows that you're not looking at somebody. You're simply looking at, maybe it's the light switch in the back of the room, and that's totally fine. Maintain good pacing and speed. Don't get too fast. Don't get too slow. You want to be able to have those pauses and that conversational flow of your speech. Embrace the pause. So oftentimes when we lose our spot, we go, because in our own brains we thought, we think, oh my gosh, everybody in the audience knows that I've lost my spot. I'm really embarrassed, all of this. I say embrace the pause because instead of saying, I actually let that silence exist as I catch my spot, and I recommence. The audience doesn't know that you've lost your spot, and that silence can actually be pretty effective. So embrace the pause. Use your voice to your benefit. So project. If any of you have ever been in choir, sang, you want to kind of get that power down here from your diaphragm, from your stomach, and really project. And use your voice, manipulate your voice. If we're supposed to be excited, get excited in your voice. If we're supposed to be somber, get slow and sad. If it's important, right, you've got that stern sound to your voice. Project and be heard. Don't talk too soft. Your audience needs to hear you. And lastly, breathe. Giving a speech is often very nerve-wracking for most of us. But if you can breathe, remind yourself to breathe, all of that oxygen and all of that good stuff gets up to your brain. It will actually help you as you go through the speech. And then lastly, tune it up. Practice, practice, practice. It's extremely important that you practice. Oftentimes we go in there without any practice whatsoever, and it becomes pretty obvious to our professor or to our instructor and to our classmates that we haven't done that. So practice, practice, practice. Do it 3, 4, 5, 6 times, but at least do it 2 to 3 times. You will be better for it, and each time you do it, it will get better. So in closing, I encourage you to go to the msudenver.edu/communication studies website, find a link to our communications lab, our presentation lab. If you're interested, we have support for you. You can actually meet with one of our professors, and we'll walk you through practicing your speech or walk you through coming up for an idea about your speech. We can help you with outlining. All of these things, we're here. You can actually go find that site. You can't really see it here. I apologize about that. It's actually tinyurl.com/MSU presentation lab. You can go there, you can get an appointment set up, and we have professors that are available basically every hour of the day, 8 to 5, who are able to meet with you and help you with your presentation. So, in closing, that is the presentation on effective public speaking. I hope you take some value from that, and best of luck.